Hey, what's up, guys? So, we're going to go over some tips in Cura to make your prints a little bit faster and maybe to make it more structural. So, let's just load in a generic print that I've done recently. Let's try this little storage container. So, I've got my S8 Pro loaded up here in the left, and we could use this for any printer really. We're just going to use the S8 Pro since we have this larger build platform. So, let's go over some settings first. So, you might not see all of these categories at first. And so to turn these on, what you want to do is you might be in this mode. You might be in basic. And the thing is, basic is great when you're just starting out. You have a couple options, not too overwhelming. Each category has, a couple things to change. You still get different infill options. This is cool. But if you really want to start printing some faster prints, I'm going to show you how to do that. And so if you come over here and click all, this is going to give you a lot more modes and options for us to play with. So the first thing that we'll talk about is quality. So when you're printing, a 0.2 layer height is about standard. But if you do want something to be if you want it to print to where you can fit it inside another piece, or it's going to have moving parts, or you need something where the tolerances are very low, you're going to want to set this down to around 1.5. Now, I have a 0.4 millimeter nozzle on my S8 Pro and my Aquila C2. Now, those are both the standard nozzle that comes with them, so you probably have the same type of nozzle I do. You can probably get away with a 0.13, but I would not recommend going a 0.1 with a 0.4. 0.15 is about the lowest that you want to do on a 0.4 millimeter nozzle. If you do want this to print a little bit faster though, we can turn this up to a 0.2. Let's do a test slice, okay? With just my default, this is in my custom PLA normal, which is basically the standard, but a few things are changed a bit. Okay, so let's slice and see how much. Okay, so 4 hours and 9 minutes. Let's see if we can get this time down, right? So I'm gonna bump up our layer height to 0.2. I'm gonna go to our walls. So we're only printing 2 walls, so that's already gonna be very fast and quite thin on the walls. But with this specific type of print, I don't actually need those extra walls, so I'm going to leave them at 0.2 or at 2. Top and bottom. So we have 3 top layers, 3 bottom layers being made right now, and they're both only 0.5 millimeters thick, which is really small. This is standard at, I believe, 0.8, but 0.5, if you turn this down, it's going to get you a much faster print. Infill. I'm only doing 10% infill, but say we just wanted to see if this was the right size, So let's go down to something even smaller. Let's try a 5% infill. And if you look at this little infill pattern here, it'll show you that the grid, triangle, the trihexagon, the cubic, octet, quarter cubic, cross and concentric patterns are fully printed every single layer. But the gyroid, cubic, quarter cubic, and octet infill change every other one. So they provide a more equal distribution of strength. So basically, if we want to go as fast as we can, it tells us that we can use this lightning at the bottom. It won't be as strong, but it will be extremely fast. So we're going to choose the lightning fill. And let's check out our speed. So the Sunlu S8 Pro, I found that you can easily print at 85 millimeters per second with 0 issues, no layer shifting, nothing crazy. You could probably go faster than this. I personally don't like to. I think it's best for the printer if you want long-term usage to keep this down to a reasonable number. The printer comes default at 65. And so this is about already 20 millimeters faster than what it comes at. So just do keep that in mind, all right? In our travel, these are all going to be the exact default settings as what's configured for S8 Pro within Ultimaker. And I'm going to say for the most part, unless you have a printer that is not very common, you're probably not going to want to change these travel modes unless you really know what you're doing and you're trying to get into some advanced geometry that you're trying to build. So we're going to close this again. The cooling, I've got these at just 100% fan speed, as the default has been working amazing for me. Support. So on something like this, support, what it will do is it'll look for any of these edges that have angles that are less than a certain amount. So if you look here, if we think, okay, what's the angle from this bottom to the top? Well, that's a 90-degree angle, and it doesn't have any of these overhangs, right? It doesn't have any parts where the printer would have to build sideways to get out onto it. So in this case, since everything could be built from the bottom to the top directly, we don't need any sort of support. In fact, since this has such a large surface on the bottom, and this is what you want to think about, the more surface area that you have that's touching your build plate means that you most likely will not even need build plate adhesion. A lot of people like to do a skirt or a brim, a raft. I honestly think it's a waste of materials, and you should set up your printer so that your extruder is purging material at the beginning over here, and it's going to move over and it's going to start filling your line. Now, if you do want to get in the habit of doing a skirt, that's totally fine. I would recommend one is plenty. But if you do have something smaller, say if this was a very small piece and I wanted to print this, it would actually make sense for me to turn up 2 or 3 skirts on it. Or even if it was going to be a tall piece, you would want to put a brim so that it can add some extra support on the bottom to prevent it from falling over whenever it prints those top layers. Because every single layer that it goes up in your printer, so if you have a very tall build surface, like the S8 Pro has a very tall build platform, if I were to print something way up here and it was very skinny, this brim would have to be huge. This would have to be at least maybe 12, 15 millimeters, possibly more, because it's every single centimeter that you go up in this Z axis, it increases the amount of pressure that is applied from the extruder on your model each layer. So if it hits your print whenever it's passing through, drawing on top, making these new layers, it's all that force is going to be pivoting at the bottom. And if you've ever used a wrench, the farther back you are on the wrench, the more power you have. So it's the same concept here. But again, in this case, since we do have just a cube-like structure with a lot of build surface on the bottom, it's fully flat too. I'm just going to completely turn this off. We don't need any build plate adhesion. Now, I don't have a dual extruder, so we're not going to touch these ones right now. Now, the special modes are pretty cool. You can do all at once or one at a time, and this is normally used, say if you had sort of a conveyor belt set up, you could actually set it to wait for one, move, and then it would print the second one in the exact same spot. And in Cura, it would actually look like you had one here, and then you duplicated one back, and it prints this one, then it prints this one. It's kind of a weird thing, but it is really cool that they have some special modes like this. And then if we come down here to experimental, I'm just going to say that for the majority of times, you're just going to want to use middle, all right? And so basically what this means is whenever you have some edge like this, and say you had another cylinder inside of it, well, if you take this middle, it's basically going to try to slice it in a way that it retains kind of the middle position of the two. And sometimes if you do middle for both parts, it'll make it fit a little bit nicer. Or if you're having some issues with it, what I've found is for the outside part, you can go exclusive. For the inside part, you can do inclusive. And sometimes that'll create a little bit better fit. All right. So let's go ahead and slice this and see how much time we have. So remember, we had about 4 hours, 6 minutes the first time. We just now shaved almost 2 hours off to do this entire print. Now, if I scroll through this, you're going to notice that the inside is very different because we're using a lightning infill. It's got these crazy looking, it's almost weird to see, but it works, and it does what it needs to. Now, I will say, if you were using this for anything that's going to have weight on it, it could crush it with this type of build, with this lightning infill. But if you want to test sizing and you just want to get it up and going, you just saved yourself 2 hours just to test something. And I think that's a fantastic achievement. So, yeah, I think that's it for this video. We will get together next time and talk about how you can make your print a lot stronger, but still shaving off some hours. All right. Thanks, guys. See you next time.